enthusiasts, how you doing? So back once again with part 6 of Project Bolt, the classic mini race car build. So today is Thursday evening, it's the 19th of April. It's been an absolutely fantastic day today. So it's been baking here in the UK. I'm down on the south coast of England, but I think most of the UK was basked in sunshine today. Temperatures up around 27, 28, I think even maybe 29 in places, which is about 82, 83 degrees Fahrenheit. It's been absolutely perfect. Wish I could have been out driving the minis, having a bit of fun. Unfortunately, it's a weekday, so it's a work day, so sitting in an office, sweating in a shirt. But hey ho, let's hope the weather stays here for the weekend and it'll be a fantastic weekend for everyone. So in this week's update, it's all about the suspension, steering and brakes. So all of the horrible bits are done on the car, all the cutting, grinding, welding, painting, wet flatting, polishing, all that hard stuff is done. It's all now about bolting the nice new shiny bits on the car, and there's some fantastic photos in a moment, some real car porn, so I'm warning you now, if you're at work, it's not safe for work. Only joking, but some great photos there. Just before we get into them, I thought I'd talk you through some of the specifications of the build, particularly the suspension, steering and brakes. And so I do apologise, I'll need to go from a list for this because there's so much on it, it's unbelievable. 1.2 mention, we retained both the original front and rear subframes. They were both stripped, sent away for powder coated, and they come back. Unfortunately, the rear subframe, it was powder coated, come back. We started going to fit it back up. There were a couple of broken bolts in for sort of the radius arm brackets, a couple of damaged holes in there. So we cleaned them up, cleaned up the threads, welded some new captive bolts in there. But unfortunately, when it come to mounting the actual radius arm brackets, they just didn't line up at all. They weren't even close. I don't know whether the subframe was bent or it was a non-standard, non-genuine subframe. But it was a bit of a mess, to be honest, and we took the decision early on that we would have liked to retain both subframes, but we decided to scrap the rear subframe. Like I say, it didn't really line up very well, so that rear subframe went and was replaced by a heritage subframe. So bear with me, I'm just going to have to pick up my list and go through it. So starting with the front subframe, so like I say, it was the original subframe that was stripped and powder coated. We had to do a little repair on it to the lower gearbox mount at the front. So at the front lower part of the gearbox, there's a mount there which goes from the gearbox to the front of the subframe. That had been broken off and the subframe wasn't actually there, so we managed to get one cut out of an old subframe. In fact, it was cut out of P.Al's old subframe, and we welded that into the subframe for Project Bolt. The subframe itself is solid mounted all round, so there's no rubber mounts in it at all. So it uses aluminium solid mounts, and it also has specialist components, alloy, lightweight tower bolts on the subframe as well. Steering rack was replaced and we put a quick rack on it. So I think the quick racks they're either 1.8 or 2.2 turns lock to lock. So when you're on the racetrack, when you're driving it, you know, it's very slight movements to turn the wheel. Rear subframe, like I say, it was a heritage subframe, so that was brand new. Front suspension and brakes, so the front brakes are quite impressive. They're CAD 4-pot big brake kit, which consists of 4-pot calipers and massive great big 265mm brake discs, which are about 10.4 inches. So I think even the biggest standard brakes on minis are 8.4, so it's another 2 inches bigger than the biggest standard ones. Yeah, I'm sure the biggest ones on minis are 8.4, so these are 10.4, absolutely huge, great stopping power, but they do come with their own problems, that you can only fit 13-inch wheels on the car, and then you have to be careful about what 13-inch wheels you fit, the amount of offset and spacers they've got on them. So Mark's got a set of, I think they're called Alicat design wheels on there. They're 13-inch, but just because of the offset of them, without spacers on there, they hit the brake calipers. so you need to be careful there. It's got braided front brake hoses on it, it's got mini spares high-lows on it, it's got race suspension front rubber cones, it's got lowered suspension knuckles, so I don't know whether they're standard off-the-shelf items. We had some standard off-the-shelf items and the suspension was too high, so Mark managed to get some knuckles which are specifically made for lower suspension and just allows you to put the suspension down a little bit lower. It's got the CAD complete alloy hubs, obviously with new wheel bearings in there, but more importantly they have like the Metro ball joints in them to replace the upper and lower suspension swivels. The Metro design is much better than the Mini design. You don't shim them up or anything, they come preset, you just bolt them up. They're better at sort of holding out the water, they last longer, and like I say, when they wear out you just unbolt them and put a new one in. You don't adjust them up like you do with Mini ones. It's got CAD alloy drive flanges on it. It's got CAD fully rose jointed and adjustable lower suspension arms, so you can adjust the camber caster tracking on the bottom while it's still on the car. It's got specially made Coney lowered dampers on it, which are specifically set for the ride height of the car. And what's really impressive, a real bit of sort of car porn, nice bit of jewellery for your car. It's got Force Racing titanium upper arms on it, and I tell you, these things weigh literally nothing. They're just, you know, probably a little bit overkill for a Mini, but they look really, really smart. So I gave Mark a bit of guidance on this, but this was all about, we were looking to build the car not as lightweight as possible, but as lightweight as practical really, while still retaining strength in it and that sort of thing. But obviously one of the most important things is having a low or a small amount of unsprung weight. So anything hanging from the suspension is unsprung weight. It's not great for a race car, it affects the handling of the car, it doesn't handle as well. So the more you can reduce there, the better. So like I say, things like the lightweight hubs, the titanium upper arms and that, they all help and contribute towards that, reducing the unsprung weight on the car. And when we move to the rear suspension, so that has CAD alloy hubs on it, it's got CAD alloy radius arms on it. They make a huge difference. They're so much lighter than the sort of cast iron radius arms that are on a Mini normally. It's got braided brake hoses on the back, it's got CAD camber toe-in and toe-out brackets. I believe they've only just started making them, but again, as you'd expect with CAD, they're really good quality, they work really well, really easy to adjust as well. It's got, again, Coney custom-made dampers on the back, which are specifically made for the ride height of the car. So Mark measured them, sent them to Coney, they made a set of dampers for the car. It's got CAD adjustable anti-roll bar on the back. Again, race rear suspension cones, mini spares high-lows. I think I mentioned mini spares high-lows on the front, but of all the high-lows I've seen, mini spares are probably the better ones. It's got DSN Classics alloy rear brake back plates, and it's got the CAD lightweight rear drums, which look, they physically look smaller than a normal Mini rear drum. They're not like mini fins, so they don't have any cooling on them, but they are extremely lightweight. So that's enough of me waffling on now. We move on to the pictures. Really hope you enjoy them, and I'll catch up with you next week, guys. Have a great week. Thank you. you.